1970s, Woodford Square was the full
Good morning, all. The meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Finance and Legal Affairs is reconvened. I wish to welcome all of you here and indicate that this is the 22nd meeting of this committee. The committee is convening its second public hearing pursuant to its inquiry into waste management policies and initiatives of the state. There are some formalities that I need to go through because this is being broadcast live. Members of the public may send comments via the Parliament's social media platforms. And normally these are listed on the sheet, but I don't see them on the sheet today. So we will have to, I'll interject with that information shortly. Before I proceed to welcome officials, I want to apologize to the members of the Arima Borough Corporation. Time in Parliament is tight, especially on a Friday morning, because there are members here who have parliamentary sittings this afternoon. So we made arrangements to hear or to treat with persons who had responded to our request. So it seems as though the response from the Arima Borough Corporation may have been misplaced or we never got it. So I apologize to you for not having been able to accommodate you this morning. Thank you very much, however, for showing your interest and for attending. We have other sessions, and we will certainly ask if you can attend on one of those other sessions. But it may be useful for you to just listen to see how the other corporations operate and so on. It might be helpful to you for when you return. So today we have officials and representatives of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, Ministry of Health, Port of Spain City Corporation, San Fernando City Corporation, Shogunas Borough Corporation, Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation. It's a lot of you, but if you could just very quickly press the button on your microphone and just introduce yourselves, starting from Mr. Leacock.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Paul Leacock, Chairman of the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Betty Ramdas Ali, CEO, Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation.
Good morning, all. Listra Park, Acting Deputy CEO, Port of Spain Corporation.
Good morning, everyone. Julia Ramirez Modest, Planning Officer, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Good morning, Madam Chair, esteemed members. My name is Stara Ram Logan, Deputy Permanent Secretary Acting, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Morning, everyone. Good morning, Madam Chair, and to the committee. My name is Vishwanath Andy Pratap Singh, Acting Chief Medical Officer, Ministry of Health.
Good morning to all. My name is Brian Amo, County Medical Officer of Health, County Caroni, attached to the Ministry of Health.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Name is Gopal Budan, Mayor of Shogunas.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Junior Regralo, Mayor of the City of San Fernando.
Morning, Madam Chair, and to all other members. My name is Gerard Ramarak, Sanitation Foreman 3, San Fernando City Corporation.
Good morning, all. My name is Indarjit Singh, CEO, San Fernando City Corporation.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Raymond C. Paul, CEO, Chaguanas Borough Corporation.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Nivan Sampson, Principal Medical and Health Officer of the Chaguanas Borough Corporation.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mark Dukaran. I'm the Public Health Inspector 4 attached to the Ministry of Health.
Morning, Madam Chair and members. Bisham Sitaram, Program Administrator, Ministry of Health.
Good morning to all. Dale Agarat, Transport Foreman 2, Port of Spain Corporation.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members. I am Mitra Suklal, Public Health Inspector 4, Port of Spain Corporation.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Needin Rivero, Public Health Officer, Tonopuno-Piarco Regional Corporation.
Thank you all very much. I don't think we've ever had such a full house. Okay, now I will introduce myself and permit members of the committee to introduce themselves. My name is Sophia Choate, and I am the chairman of this committee.
Clarence Rambarat, Vice Chairman.
Vidya Guiding Gopi Singh, member.
Lester Henry, member.
Tahar Kobika, member.
Lavelle Francis, member.
The two other gentlemen you see sitting at the table are members of our secretariat. In particular, you may have heard from Mr. Ogilvy, who is the clerk to the committee. Now, just so that we can focus and so that our listening public and viewing public may be reminded of the purposes of the inquiry, I will just review very briefly the three objectives of this inquiry. One, to examine the level of waste production in Trinidad and Tobago. Two, to assess the effectiveness of regulations and policies directed at waste management. And three, to assess the adequacy of resources and institutions associated with the management of waste. There are quite a few of you who I'm going to ask to make opening statements. So we normally ask that these opening statements be kept to 2 minutes because we want to get down to the business at hand. So I will ask you to please keep an eye on the clock and marshal yourself so that you can make your opening statement within that 2-minute period. May I begin by asking Ms. Ram Logan, who is the Deputy Acting Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, to make an opening statement.
Good morning, Chair, esteemed members of the committee, and our viewing public. The Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government would like to thank you for this opportunity to participate in the inquiry into the waste management policies and initiatives of the state, as we all seek to determine the effectiveness of the existing regulatory, administrative, and institutional framework for solid waste management. It has been established by previous submissions to this esteemed committee that the administration framework for waste management in Trinidad and Tobago is complex, spreading across 4 ministries, namely the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Public Utilities, Ministry of Planning and the Environment, and Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Of course, we also have one state liability company, Swimgull, one statutory authority, the EMA, and the THA, all having responsibility for waste management. So you can just imagine, in terms of the delineation of function and in terms of lead responsibility for waste management in the country. It is expected that through our collaborative efforts here today, we can identify the existing gaps, deficiencies, and constraints which can inform the recommendation required to improve the governance structure, policies, systems, and processes of solid waste management for the health and well-being of all our citizens, the protection and preservation of our natural environment, and the optimization of our financial and human resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now ask Dr. Partha Singh to make some opening statements.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I wish to express my sincere thanks for granting us the opportunity to appear before this committee on the subject inquiry into waste management policies and initiatives of the state. Referencing the official government policy framework 2015-2020, the environment and public health is a high priority. This forum serves as a great opportunity to strengthen best practices within our context, as well as to review and address the challenges and threats with supporting recommendations in the operations and management of the environment with respect to policy, program formulation, and implementation. Madam Chair, I thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Budan, would you make an opening statement?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We at the Borough of Chaguanas, we are very grateful for this opportunity here this morning that we could share some of the work that we do in Chaguanas, some of the challenges that we may face in terms of waste disposal and the whole issue of health and the environment, and also to recommend to this committee and to the country at large some of the initiatives that we think that we could put forward so that we could have a better health, not only in Chaguanas, but throughout the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Regrello.
Madam Chair, we are also pleased to be here and for the opportunity to express our thoughts and our views. We want to begin by commending the Ministry for the initiative and, of course, our waste management policies that they have introduced so far. We are guided by the contractual arrangements, and, of course, we have no problem with it. However, we may have one concern, if we could be critical here, which deals with the recycling aspect, which was not considered up to this point, and we seriously recommend that we look at including recycling at the national level, because that's a critical aspect in terms of we move forward with waste management. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. May I now invite Mrs. Stapleton Seaforth to make some opening comments? Sorry? I can't see from here. Okay, I'm sorry, I just can't see it's Mrs. Listra Park? Yes, I apologize.
No
Would you make a brief opening statement?
Okay. Good morning, and thanks for extending the invitation to the Port of Spain Corporation. Well, at the Port of Spain Corporation, I know that we have a very good waste disposal system in place, in that we have a very large area that we service, that's within our electoral district. We also have contractors that we have in the different accessible and inaccessible areas in Belmont and areas like that. And right now we have a subcommittee that is dealing with waste management, where we are looking at starting, and we have an initiative to start doing recycling. Well, thank you. I think that's it. I think I'm at 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. May I now invite opening comments from Mr. Paul Leacock?
Good morning again, Madam Chair, and to all members of the committee. Tunapuna-Piarco Regional Corporation is by far, well, it's physically the second largest corporation in the country, but it is by far, in terms of population, the largest corporation in the country. And therefore, scavenging and garbage collection is significant to us. We spend several millions a year involved in this process, and therefore we have participated with Sumpol in a short pilot project as regards to the recycling. It was successful, but our aim is to see that expanded throughout the region and to ensure that we are able to do so in a way where we have local businessmen who will be able to benefit from the process, while at the same time we could change the mindsets of the burgesses of the region. So we look forward and we thank you for the opportunity to participate in this forum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leacock. All right, so the process is, now that you are here, members of the committee will be asking you certain questions. And please remember that when you answer, to turn on your mic, otherwise what you say will not be recorded. And we would very much like to have a proper recording of all that's said here. Parties are supposed to direct their questions through the chair, and similarly, you direct your answers through the chair. So I now invite members who may have questions. Dr. Francis.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to our panelists this morning. Chair, through you, Madam Pumsek, I will start with you. Good morning again. You've stated the truth, which is that we have a intertwined waste management system in this country. For the sake of the viewing public, what is the role of your ministry in this?
Presently, the role of our ministry is reduced to collection only. Solid Waste Management Company has been moved to the Ministry of Public Utilities. When they were previously under the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, we were responsible for the management and development of landfills. Thank you.
And just for clarification, all of the collection is done through the regional corporations, the cities, and the boroughs?
Presently, yes.
Okay. All right, so now the substantive question. What kind of oversight is provided by your ministry to ensure that these processes under 14 regional corporations is handled properly? Maybe to make it simpler, do you provide oversight, and then what kind of oversight is provided?
We do the management and oversight of these solid waste management contracts at the regional corporation through the formulation of the contracts and the provisions within the contract. Subsequent to every contract period, we do an evaluation, and based on the outcome of this evaluation, it determines the next terms of reference for the procurement process for those contractors. And at every subsequent opportunity that we do have, we try to introduce measures to improve that system. We could go into it further as we go along the process.
How do you evaluate?
We evaluate by feedback from both the citizens and the corporation CEO and the staff at the corporations.
Okay. Mr. Regrello, your opening statement caught me in the sense that you said that you would like to have attention placed on recycling. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that?
This currently does not speak to recycling, and I'm saying that there's an opportunity for us at this point to include at the national level. We could look at the culture, the education aspect, opportunities and benefits from recycling that need to be explored and probably developed.
Morning again. I would like to go straight to Gerard Ramharak, who played a very critical role in the national cleanup campaign. Gerard, you would have learned a lot of lessons from that national campaign across 14 municipalities. Tell us a little bit about the end result of the campaign and what you picked up in terms of what we should be doing with waste management in Trinidad and Tobago.
Madam Chairman, I am happy to be here today to share the experiences I had by going through the entire country with the National Cleanup Campaign 2017. I have no doubts in my mind that there is need for improvement with respect to waste management throughout the country, but more specifically with respect to each corporation, each regional corporation, getting it right with respect to having proper scavenging schedules with respect to dates and times. I have observed throughout this country a lot of indiscriminate dumping. And what the question that comes up is, if it is we are spending so much money on waste management, procuring scavenging contracts, we need to deal with the culture. How do we deal with the culture with respect to this indiscriminate dumping? There is need for serious public health education throughout this country.
Well, I got part of the answer. Is there anything else? Because I understand what you mean by culture. So, for example, and I don't know if you have the data, the cleanup dealt with tires, for example, across the country. I don't know if you have the data on the collection. So that is one part of it, the culture and the need to change attitudes and maybe to increase penalties and so on. Was there anything else you encountered in terms of...
Madam Chairman, I would want to say that that program was a success with respect to, and to remind the committee that, of course, it was a voluntary service provided by contractors throughout the country. And if you were to look at some of the figures with respect to waste collected and disposed of throughout the entire country, if we were to look at tires alone, and if I were to look at the different regional corporations, for example, the Diego Martin Regional Corporation, we collected and had over 4,500 tires shredded through Swimcol. Port of Spain City Corporation, 1,200. The Sawal Avantil Regional Corporation, 1,500. Chaguanas Borough Corporation, 1,800. Cuva Tabaqui Talparo Regional Corporation, 1,200. San Fernando City Corporation, 500. Pinal Debe Regional Corporation, 1,930. Siparia Regional Corporation, 75. Point 14 Borough Corporation, 375. Princestown Regional Corporation, 5,000. Sandy Grande Regional Corporation, 566.
Do you have a total figure?
When we look at the total, it's approximately 10,700 tires were collected and shredded through the Swimcol.
Thank you. What I want to ask you, when the tires are shredded, what happens to them?
Swimcol, it was reused by Swimcol for public road building at their landfill site.
It's reused?
At Swimcol facilities, landfills.
At the landfill site?
At the landfill.
I see. I have a question for the Deputy PS. Mrs. Ram-Logan, could you just explain to me, because we've received written submissions from the corporations, and what I am seeing is that some corporations have garbage collection vehicles and some have none. Who is responsible for procuring garbage trucks for the corporations?
Madam Chair, the corporations themselves, through their recurrent expenditure budget proposals, the development planning projects as well, PSIP, they can submit for the procurement of vehicles for that purpose.
So would there be any reason why Well, perhaps I can ask Mr. Boudan. Mr. Boudan, have you submitted requests for garbage trucks for your corporation?
Madam Chair, many years ago, the regional corporations, they had their own garbage trucks that was owned by the corporation that they do garbage collection. And it would have been like 20 years more that it came under contractual arrangements. And the process works in the way that when you have those persons on a yearly basis that bids for those contracts, it's been done by SWIMCOL. We identify the areas that we work with. In the case of Shogunus, we have 13 scavenging areas, and contracts are awarded by SWIMCOL for those areas. So it's not that we at the corporation do the procurement and the selection of those contractors, but it is done by SWIMCOL, which is national tenders, open tenders. So anybody even outside of Central Trinidad or are entitled to apply and to be a contractor in the borough of Shogunus. There are times that we have grave challenges with that, and also to the hours that those contractors would work, and a lot of complaints come to the corporation as it relates to those garbage contracts. And I heard earlier that the oversight by SWIMCOL as it relates to that, and I think that if I could share something here, that it need greater oversight to have that those contractors operate within the contracted hours and within the what they would have in terms of their obligations.
Well, do you think the oversight issue may be resolved if the corporation has its own fleet?
Yes. That could be one of the options as you move forward, that if they have the fleet. But Madam Chair, it brings us to a bigger process as we go forward. In that, one of the things that that we at Shogunus would have indicated that has been touted a long while, that you will have local government reform, and I would have said many times in our council meetings that if we have to have local government reform, I think one of the best places that we could start as a pilot project is the transport and the workshop sections in regional corporations, because there's always been a historical perspective on that it takes very long in terms of vehicles being repaired, the procurement of parts or so, and to have that done. So if that could go hand in hand in an initiative where we could have that, then the corporations could, in a first phase basis, have those compactors to do garbage collection.
Well, what I would ask you arising out of that, and I don't want to steal the time from the members, but it's just a final question on this, is has the corporation done any recent study or comparison to show that having your own compactors would be cheaper to acquire and manage and maintain than contracting it out? Has there been any sort of evaluation of that?
Yes, I think that is work in progress, and I would like to ask our CEO, Mr. Sipol, if he could share some information on that.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. Let me just say that it's a privilege to be here to be discussing this very, very important matter, which is of great national significance. With respect to the issue of the corporation having its own in-house fleet of garbage removal vehicles, there has been somewhat of a feasibility study conducted. And because of the tremendously high cost to procure such equipment, along with the maintenance of equipment, it was seen as a good decision to go the contractual route. Being responsible for a fleet of these vehicles, while there will be advantages. It is a very complex exercise, particularly with respect to the maintenance and the servicing of these vehicles. So I would say that at this point in time, unless we do not have a very efficient mechanical workshop with all the skills and competencies, all the people who are competent enough to maintain vehicles, as well as the dealing with wear and tear on a monthly basis, it may be advisable for the municipal corporation to go the contractual route.
Yes. Mrs. Gopi Singh, Mrs. Gaideen Gopi Singh.
Thank you. I don't want the Ministry of Health to feel alienated here, so I'd like to ask a question. It's my understanding that a few years ago, there ought to have been established a board of survey, a body called a board of survey, as an oversight body to deal with the disposal of expired drugs. So my first question is, what is the status of that particular body, the Board of Surveys? Because I believe it ought to have been established by the Regional Health Authority. And it's also my understanding that there were about 70,000 flu shots that were imported. Not all have been given. There are still thousands of them yet to be administered. And the expiry date is sometime in June of 2018. So how is it the ministry deals with the disposal of expired drugs to have it with best practice?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and member for the question. So with regard to the Board of Survey with the first question that you asked, I do not have that information. I would ask if we can be allowed to provide that by a written response. With regard to the disposal of expired medicines, so there is a procedure for addressing this, and that procedure is adhered to. It's followed by all the RHAs. It is followed through the Ministry of Health. So it's a very detailed procedure. I can also provide by account in a written response. Does that suffice the member?
Well, we would have been grateful for a little more information, but certainly feel free to provide it to the Secretariat. We look forward to amplification of what you've just said.
Madam Chair, because the steps are so detailed and so outlined, I think it will take a lot of time to do so, and we can support the answer by sending the process flow, and so that supports that, so that will provide a more comprehensive answer to the information to the panel.
Great, thank you.
With respect to the flu shots, do you have any information, like how many still to be administered?
So you need to remember that the flu season extends from October till about of the preceding year till the winter time, say end of March, April of the current year. The administration of the flu vaccines is something that continues throughout the period. It is not restricted to that particular period in time. We still have a significant part of the year for within which to administer the flu vaccines. So with that context, there is still time for the year to administer the remaining flu vaccines. To answer the question as to how many are remaining, I didn't walk with that information today, but we can also provide that answer in written response.
Thank you.
Just one more to follow up. With respect to the expiry date, can those shots be administered how long after the expiry date? Is it still viable 3 months after, 6 months after the expiry date?
Is this related to waste?
With respect to getting rid of the disposal of expired drugs.
Yeah.
So maybe I can summarize by saying that expired drugs are incinerated. That is the primary method of disposal, and within there now. And so that's why, I mean, I'm taking you all the way down to the end, but to show you the rigidity of the process. So through incineration, and so we're not looking at a possibility of, say, persistent organic pollutants or pharmaceuticals getting into the water supply or the food chain supply, if that is the concern, because of the method of disposal.
And now we understand. You see, we lay people don't necessarily follow these technical things, and we need to have it explained to us.
My apologies.
Dr. Francis, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. In her opening statement, the Deputy CEO of the Port of Spain City Council expressed satisfaction with the contractual arrangements under which garbage is collected. Mayor Budan said something a bit different. So I was wondering if I could get the views of Mayor Reguero and the chairman of the Tunapuna Regional Corporation on the same issue.
Based on our data analysis and gathering of information, we are satisfied with the contractual arrangements. It would differ from municipality to municipality, but we are satisfied with what we are having so far with the contractors and their ability to deliver.
Thank you, Dr. Lovell. First of all, Dr. Lovell, let me put on record. A question was asked about if the municipalities are the bodies that pick up garbage. I just want to point out that HDC also is involved in garbage collection in some of their sites, for instance, East Grove, Greenvale, Maloney, Cleaver Heights. And on private estates such as the University of the West Indies, they have their own contractors, right? Having said that, my understanding is that at some point Tunapuna may also have had their own fleet. There has been an issue with productivity at all corporations, and this is over the life of the 1990 Act to now. And therefore, the maintenance of those fleets of vehicles those separate fleets of vehicles at different corporations have become significant issues, as Mayor Budan attempted to explain. So that the challenge always has been how efficient can any of your services that rely on your own vehicles be. As a matter of fact, at TPRC, from time to time, we have one backhoe for months. And that's the service a region that goes from Blanchishes to Monroe Road, Aripo to Mount Hope. So that putting it in the hands of your own fleet has always been difficult. On the other hand, it was contracted out, hoping that contractors would be more efficient. Unfortunately, I think because the contracted services have been concentrated in the hands of a few contractors, they too have become very complacent. I always point out to the contractors when we meet with them that when I went to primary school and read Miguel Street, there used to be a sub-story about a guy who wanted to be a scavenging engineer. And that was a proud accomplishment in that particular village. But today, the majority of contractors hire persons who are not best suited to deal with the public, persons who they could underpay, and as a result, the interaction between the burgesses and the contracted services is poor, and as a result, it's not half as efficient as it should be.
Okay. So if neither template seems to be, well, to use a bad word, ideal, what would either both mayors, Madam Deputy CEO, or you, Mr. Leacock, suggest as a best working formulation?
Chair, what I would suggest is that, well, I shouldn't say suggest, our system where we have members of our department, public health department, monitoring the process and the various reporting process again to ensure that they adhere to the strict guidance and regulations of our contractual arrangement, and that is working for us so far.
So you've already implemented
that process is...
A kind of an intervention?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question from Dr. Henry.
Yes, morning everyone. I want to change gears somewhat and deal with the issue of single-use plastics. I know there's a lot of concern, in fact, not in the whole world, about what are we doing about these bottles, like water bottles and so on, that tend to be clogging up just about everywhere, rivers, seas, and so on. Are any of the corporations taking initiatives on their own to deal with the single-use plastics, or is it that you sit back and wait for a national policy to be implemented? Any of the corporations can answer.
Good morning. Madam Chair, Chairman, members of the committee. So I would just like to say that the Tunapuna-Piako Regional Corporation did attempt an initiative in 2016 for a 6-month period where we did do some segregation of waste. We rolled it out in a few communities. It was successful in one particular area, Trin-City, for example. But we found that it was not quite sustainable. So the corporation sees it as it's important, because what we're discussing here this morning is that sustainability in terms of garbage collection, right? Garbage collection shouldn't really be seen as just garbage itself. We have to look at the implications in terms of going forward. And as Dr. Henry rightly said, plastics is something in the environment. We have to look at long term. This is something that is not going to just degrade on its own. So I think the corporations really have to, should look at initiatives, continuing initiatives. And what I'm pleased about really is that we're looking at it now through this forum on a national perspective. So it should be a holistic approach, really.
Dr. Henry, if I may add to that, the TPRC has also engaged University of the Western Indies on 2 other initiatives, one being the use of crumb rubber in paving, so much so that we've engaged a contractor and the university under Dr. Ford, and I forgot the other professor's name, Dr. Ford in chemistry, but they're looking at an international already used solution and adapting the mix to Trinidad space together with a contractor in an attempt to try to use it on 2 roads within this fiscal year, and then see if we could replicate it in other spaces. We've also had we've had one cement company who has indicated to us that they would like to speak to us about the use of plastic and concrete and cement in doing paving in rural spaces. We also intend to explore that, and our own PHO, Ms. Ribeiro, who is seated behind me, has engaged a lot of the staff in ways that are innovative to see if we could reuse tires on the compound for simple things like tables and chairs, and that we could use in our own grounds and spaces. So we have looked at some recycling initiatives in our space.
Thank you. Dr. Henry, you have another question?
No, because the gist of my question is also to urge the corporations not to wait on a national policy. And I mean, I like the initiatives that I heard, but I think there needs to be more of that, instead of just waiting for the central government to declare a bill or law or whatever to deal with this issue, because I think it's something that is very critical. And as I said, it's not only in Trinidad and Tobago, it's all over the world that this, and most of the time you read about plastics being banned or being prescribed in any particular way. It's usually done at the local level. It's at the local level. It's hardly done at a national level. If you look at Australia, England, it's usually the local regional corporations that deal with the issue rather than the overall government. And I just one more point, in terms of the encouragement of more biodegradable material to be used in, especially the food containers, those styrofoam things, apart from the plastics. You know,
Well,
there might be an
actually,
issue.
Dr. Henry, I'm quite glad that you raised that issue because I think even though we haven't been able to have a very deep discussion from the points that have come out so far, we recognize that the corporations are taking the initiative to try to address waste and recycling and reusable materials and that kind of thing. I don't think that there has been any corporation present or any person present who's not spoken about some such project. I also recognize, however, that they are under the ministry, the directive of the ministry. So they answer to Ms. Ram Logan if they step out of bounds. So we appreciate the constraints that you are working under. We congratulate you for the efforts you've made. Mr. Leacock, at a later stage, I want you to tell us a little more about that pilot project. But before we go there, Senator Obika has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 3 quick questions, and the first is regarding the health and safety of these gentlemen who are engaged in the collection of garbage, gentlemen and ladies, and the other is regarding the removal of derelict vehicles, and the third is an initiative that could be looked at. So for San Fernando City Corporation, I realize you have a small fleet. So could the mayor or Mr. Ramharak indicate what measures are there to protect the health and safety of the persons who are involved in the garbage collection? For example, you may see persons, their face is uncovered, their hands may not have protective gear, and they may have children at home, and they may be interacting with persons in transport when they're going home as well. You can only imagine if you just take a cloth across your face, you get all the germs and so on. And if they have young children, they can be affected. Is there anything to look at that?
This exercise is conducted by the Public Health Department, but I would like our CEO to answer this question, sir.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. In respect to health and safety, at the San Fernando City Corporation, the first approach to health and safety would be related to our health and safety department. What we try to provide based on money releases to us, and in fact, there are money releases to us. Monies are released to us for the purchase of PPE. Our public health department ensures that the uniforms are wear prior to exiting the site. Most of our fleets are based at the Carib Street compound, and as you're aware, we are one of the corporations that has three of these compacting trucks. What we also have in place is that the contractors report, that's the contracted trucks, report to the Carib Street compound before they go into their various districts. And this is where that we ensure that the PPE, the proper PPE, are worn by these contracted workers. The corporation, as I said, receives money under the recurrent expenditure to purchase equipment, to purchase PPE for our staff. So it is something that is a mandate in the sense of every morning. In fact, I have been at Carib Street at 3 o'clock on one morning just to inspect, to make sure that these things are undertaken. Now, at times you would see the vehicles out there without the right PPE, and in most instances would be the contracted trucks, the contracted workers are the ones that are really not wearing the PPE. And when these things are reported to us, we address it immediately with the contractor. And as Mayor had suggested earlier on in terms of the working of the contractors in the city of San Fernando, that arrangement, we have an arrangement with them in terms of where we are guided by their contract agreement. And the contract agreement specifically speaks to PPE and wearing PPE. Another aspect of health and safety would be with respect to the vehicles, the sanitizing of the vehicles, ensuring that the slump pan of the vehicles are properly working so that they can collect the liquid waste. And these are things that are inspected on a regular basis.
Thank you. The other, at least there are systems, but I've seen persons, I guess they may have been the private contractors, to the extent of persons being bareback or with just some slim vests on. So if those could be addressed, it would be good, for at least for the contractor's sake. The other thing is the derelict vehicles. From the report, we have many corporations having removed derelict vehicles in the past 3 years, but no indication as to what was done regarding the recycling or the disposal, except San Fernando City Corporation stating that they were rotted shells, and so they were placed at a waste disposal site. But even when it reaches this site, what happens with those vehicles? Is it that we have some compaction and we have the repurposing of the materials for use in manufacturing, etc.? Can anyone provide an answer?
Mr. Amrock, answer the question for us, please.
Okay, morning again. In San Fernando, in terms of at the site, well, we are all aware that there are salvagers at the site. And when you take these items there, in fact, before you actually have the opportunity to discard these things are normally taken care of. Hence the reason why in 2015, the Council of the San Fernando City Corporation approved the use of our land space in San Fernando for the purpose of constructing sheds so that we can conduct sorting of these materials, these bulk wastes. Applications were made for funding under the PSIP in 2016, and we continue to make application today so that we can provide a space for these bulk wastes. Now, the derelict vehicle, after it's littered, it's treated as bulk waste.
Thanks, and just want to make one comment, probably for the ministry. We may be, just as the country was energized for the National Cleanup Campaign, we could benefit from probably a most clean or the cleanest corporation campaign, and with some kind of award, so persons can have some bragging rights, and that may also help spur some activity and energize the staff at the regional corporations. Thanks.
Well, that's an excellent suggestion. Competition is always good. But if we may go back to the derelict vehicles, Mr. Leacock, I see you have a very big problem because you had 199. So how do you deal with that?
Madam Chair, in my electoral district, which is Bonnie Aruka Cane Farm, at present, I can identify at least 10 derelict vehicles that I cannot move because I have nowhere to take them. When we started to take up these derelict vehicles, we identified the salvagers who were willing to take them and cut them up and export them. As a matter of fact, at that same time, most corporations would have had challenges keeping their manhole covers because the price of steel was so attractive that the salvagers would salvage those too. But then the price of steel fell significantly, and then nobody wanted to take the items from us. And then you also have the challenges of finding a place to hold them in the interim, and that has been a significant challenge for us. So all over the region, we have derelict vehicles that we could serve the persons we think are the owners, but we have nowhere to take them to. And so, although our litter wardens are in fact some of our most reliable workers, they have not enjoyed the kinds of success that we would want in terms of getting these vehicles removed. But we are contacting some salvagers. We have heard that there is a company or two that's involved in compacting in recent times, and we're looking into those. Probably the solution may lie in really finding ways to monetize these services and getting the garbage elsewhere.
Dr. Francis?
Yeah. Through you, Chair. Local government reform as viewed now as in this incarnation might result in even broadened responsibilities for the regional corporations, boroughs and city corporations vis-a-vis waste. Are you all in the process of getting ready for this? I would like an answer from the PermSec, her view, and then from the purveyors themselves, or purveyors themselves.
With respect to getting ready at the regional corporation level in municipalities, I know my permanent secretary did present to the Honorable House already with the consultative process that has taken place with the corporations in terms of the institutional and administrative structures that have to be put in place for these devolved responsibilities. That note actually has gone before the Ministry of Public Administration. But in the interim, we have taken the proactive approach in terms of hiring persons on contract until those positions become established. Positions such as the litter wardens, and we presently have public health officers on contract to assist with respect to solid waste management. So we are taking an incremental approach to implementation, because if we wait for the whole of reform to happen, it's never going to happen. We have been attempting for the last 15 to 20 years, and we do hope that with this effort, we would achieve some incremental gains towards devolution of some of the responsibilities totally to the corporation. But we have to ensure that they have the capacity to deal with those devolved responsibilities. So in the interim, we are trying to formulate policies, etc., that would guide some of the operations, standard operating procedures to ensure that there is consistency in the approach across the corporations. But it's a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman has a question.
To the Port of Spain City Corporation, nothing like a real-life example. Two things. The first is that, and this is how the public sees it, particularly on a Saturday morning, but sometimes during the week, I have observed a pickup pulling up opposite Long Circular Mall just outside Forestry Division, and the guy sells his fish, scaling the fish on the pavement, scales falling all over, and for a few hours, that spot turns into a fish market. I brought it to the attention of the City Corporation on many occasions. I'm sure there is a requirement at the bylaw level for the sale of fish and for activities of that nature to be conducted in a particular manner. That's the first one. And the second one, when I became minister, I observed certain practices of the coconut vendors around the savannah, and I presented to the corporation a report done by an expert. Over the Easter weekend, I observed around the savannah construction activities going on all those the carriages that the vendors sell out of. If you go now, you would see rusty steel plates on the ground. You would see where the operators decided to do repair work and strip those carriages and put the materials all over. You would see there is no removal of the coconut waste. The waste is piled up there for days and weeks. You would see rats at night, traipsing over the coconut. And a lot of people don't realize that the Queen's Park Savannah, like everything in this country, jurisdiction is a big factor. A lot of people don't realize from the rail to the edge of the sidewalk is the jurisdiction of the city. The road is the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Works. And on the inside of the rail is the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Agriculture. A lot of people have problems understanding that, and I don't blame them. But waste management and health and public health go together. So I've used that to ask at the household level, and this is across the board, what are the powers available to all of you and each of you to deal with indiscriminate disposal at a household level, on lot and curbside, in drains and in watercourses. In relation to business premises, what are your powers? In relation to institutions like schools, what are your powers? And in particular, what are your powers in relation to public health? I told the committee when we were in camera that part of the challenge is that the city has public health inspectors, the ministry has public health inspectors, and it's difficult to know who is responsible for what. So what are your powers in relation to public health, litter, enforcement of the Litter Act, and the other actions that you can take? So for example, when I drove on Lady Young yesterday, and I saw the pile of tires on the roadside, as a citizen, I really don't know who to alert. Now I know that that is Sawa Regional Corporation. You might think it's the city, it's Sawa. But who do I call? The public health inspector, because mosquitoes could dwell in the tires? Do I call Swimcol and say you have tires to recycle? Do I call the public health inspector of the Ministry of Health? Do I call the public health inspector of Regional Corporation? That is, and nothing like a good example to maximize the strength of this team we have in front of us and this big issue we have to deal with. And I would really like if you could address everything I've said.
Well, if I may make a suggestion, I think perhaps the person to best answer that would be Ms. Ram-Logan.
I would like to defer to public health and the municipal corporations, who are our, what I should say, they are our operational arm, so they would be more intimate with some of the limitations of our regulations.
Well, Ms. Park, perhaps we could start with you.
Madam Chair, through you, can I ask our public health inspector for Mr. Suklal to respond, please?
Certainly, Mr. Suklal.
Okay, thank you. Good morning again, Madam Chair, members. In relation to the authority that we have to enforce litter removal, that would speak to really two pieces of legislation, which would be the Litter Act and the Public Health Ordinance. Under those two pieces of legislation, we can deal with private, public, and institutional premises, and that we can enforce the removal of litter. The acts will also allow us to, would allow the local authority to take its own action to abate those nuisances if we do not get compliance from the owners or occupiers of such.
Thank you. Mrs. Gayadeen Gopi Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to continue with a line that Mr. Rambarat had just cited. And there were one common question was asked by the corporations, and the response, I just want to relate to the response. The common question asked was, how many written notices were issued further to Section 6 and 7 of the Act, which is the Litter Act 3052, during the past 3 years? San Fernando gave us 413 cases. Shugwanas gave us 4,358 cases. And Port of Spain City Corporation gave us 0. So when I listened to what Mr. Rambarat just said, and he spoke about the plethora of problems he had cited in the Port of Spain City Corporation, driving on Lady Young, driving around the Savannah, and so I'm just trying to figure out how have we come with 0 in Port of Spain City Corporation for the number of written notices sent? Is it that you have litter wardens or you don't have? How have we come with this to be 0?
Madam Chair, through you, we have litter wardens, But I'll also ask our public health inspector to answer this question, please, because the litter wardens, he is the supervisor for the litter wardens.
Before we go there, Ms. Park, clear up one thing before we move on. I see you have 6 litter prevention wardens. Are you operating at maximum capacity, or is it that only 6 are hired?
11 was hired, but we're down to 6.
How many are you able to hire? What would be an adequate amount, should I say?
Okay, the hiring of the litter prevention wardens, that is done through the ministry, at the ministry level. For us in Port of Spain, I believe if we can get about, let us say, about 30 litter wardens.
So you would like to have 30.
About 30.
Is it that you are allocated in numbers by the ministry?
Yes, we are, but not
So
for
what's your
request.
what's your allocation?
11. We got 11 at the beginning.
Okay.
11
And
litter wardens.
what is the reason for it now being 6?
I believe 4 of them resigned. 4 of them left the litter warden.
Yes. Okay. Well, now could we go on?
All right.
To the other
So,
aspect of it?
Right, just in terms of clarification, we would have had 1 transfer from the 11 initial, in answering the previous question, 1 transfer and 4 resignations. That's how we're down to a total number of 6 litter prevention wardens. To answer the other question, in terms of the issues that we have in the city, the wardens that we have attached to us, what we normally do is we utilize the fixed penalties to enforce provisions of the Act. Because of the nature of some of the littering that takes place within the city. So to that end, the wardens attached to the city would normally serve, like I said, those fixed penalties. We would have served 807 of those fixed penalties for the 3-year period.
Now, perhaps, since I don't want to lose the Vice Chairman's point, with respect to this issue of the state of the pavement around the savannah, who is responsible for that? Is it the corporation?
Yes, that would be the city corporation.
Well, if so, Mr. Rambarat has said that he has made more than 1 complaint, I believe. Why has no attention been paid to that?
In relation to that is in relation to the issue with the coconut vending. We have had inspectors visit the coconut vendors, and they're currently engaging the attention of the Public Health Department with respect to their waste collection and management.
Well, could you tell me what that means, please? Currently engaging the attention of the Public Health Department?
Well, we would have sent inspectors to the site. We would have interfaced with all of the vendors there and indicated to them what is required in terms of their collection and removal of waste from their facilities. We're also in the process of monitoring and ensuring compliance with our directives.
How often is that done?
I would not be able to answer the frequency within which it's done once we receive a complaint, because that will normally, the district public health inspector assigned to the savannah and the district will normally address that issue. They will have other duties to perform, but in the normal scheme of their duties would require visits to the savannah, which are done at least twice a month. And if there are issues at that point in time, then we will address it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, could Mr. Sukla indicate if these coconut vendors are serviced by any waste disposal, garbage collection appliances?
They're not serviced by the Port of Spain Corporation. They have their own private arrangements for removal of their waste.
So then, would it be safe to say that system has failed and that some revisit to that could be entertained? Because if it's simply a matter of at least one of the main concerns that Minister Rambarat raised was disposal of the waste, if that can be alleviated, at least that's one, the rats issue could be easily handled from there. So could there be any revisit of that system that the vendors are utilizing?
Yes, the corporation is currently looking at the contractual obligations or the manner in which the coconut vendors operate at the savannah, and we're also in the process of addressing that as part of a larger issue with them.
Meaning?
Well, we would want to look at what we would want to look at is to ensure that they operate, you know, as is required. What we need to ensure that those requirements are enshrined in a contractual arrangement with the coconut vendors.
Well, in the meantime, it seems to me that, I mean, these coconut vendors are almost a fixture in the city. It's not only citizens who go there, it's tourists who go there and this kind of thing. While we talk about who is responsible for what, can there not be garbage receptacles placed in the vicinity, collected by garbage trucks, which would alleviate the problem and alleviate possibly a great health problem?
Madam Chair, we will have to have that discussion with our Chief Executive Officer in terms of if that issue can be addressed outside the remit of the contract, but it's something we're willing to look at.
If we have a gyro shop operating on the side of the road, and there's a receptacle outside where he puts the waste from his shop when he closes it, is it collected by the Port of Spain City Corporation?
Yes, the receptacles, there are receptacles around the savannah. Those in relation to if you have a business operation generating that type of commercial quantities of waste, then they're responsible for their own refuse collection and disposal. In relation to the Queen's Park Savannah, there would be receptacles around the savannah. Those are normally serviced by the corporation. However, the nature of the waste that is generated by the coconut vendors, as you would appreciate, is bulky in nature. And as they're conducting a business as well, it should, we feel that they should bear some of the burden of management for the removal of that waste.
Oh, I see. So it comes down to who is going to pay at the end of the day, and that has not yet been resolved.
Well, that in addition to some of the other contractual obligations have not been resolved as yet with the vendors.
Before we run out of time, I certainly want to hear from Mr. Leacock about this pilot project which took place in his corporation, because I'm sure it is something of interest for the other corporations as well.
So ma'am, my last chairman, I was vice chairman at the end of the last term. My last chairman was Mr. Edwin Gooding, Alderman Edwin Gooding, and he sat with SwimCall and came to some agreements that they would champion a recycling project. They identified Trin City because Trin City was well planned in terms of gridding of the streets, access to trucks, etc. And so the public health officer, Mr. Barrow, together with a clerk from Mr. Gooding's office, Ms. Hussain, and the then CEO got together and planned how it could work. They held some we held some public education events and invited the public to discuss how we could do it. And we involved the majority of Trin City, Bolio, Cane Farm, Casabon, Castleton, etc., Dinsey, etc. In the first 6 months, I think they were able to collect over 10,000 Tetra Paks, single-use plastic bottles, etc. And SwimCall had indicated that they wanted to replicate the program significantly. Part of the challenge has been that to do so, we created special bags that the Burgesses were given free. And as a result, Burgesses had gotten accustomed to getting that free. That was not sustainable over the long run, of course. But we still do feel that it can be. If we get the bags properly labeled, we can sell them in the right places. Of course, you have to change attitudes about how you'll put them out, what they'll be used for. So you don't sell them cheap and then somebody will buy the bags and use it for something else because they're cheaper than other garbage bags. Or we could allow Burgesses to just use clear plastic bags, period. So what we've asked SWIMCOL to do is extend the program to all gridded areas, all well-planned areas throughout TPRC. And we're prepared for our public health officers to sit with SWIMCOL, identify what these grids should be, and instead of using the large contractors, now another issue is that the large contractors felt that wasn't part of their normal open tray service because they picked it up on Wednesdays. And SWIMCOL felt that was a part of the contract. And so that's been the major fallout of the program, that the contractors are not willing to pick it up unless we vary the contract. We are saying going forward, we would like to have a separate contract, possibly reduce the open tray service to 2 days, and instead identify 1 day only for recycling throughout the region, where they would pick up Tetra Paks, plastics, etc., in one set of packaging, and we would also do grass pickup because we have an agreement. Well, we have a memorandum of understanding with University of the West Indies, and one of the projects, I think it's Dr. St. Fort, is willing to explore is that of composting. So there's the opportunity for us to pick up both grass and plastics on the same day. And if you take that out of the garbage collection, you can use that money, one, to create small contractors who could probably use a truck as small as a 2-ton truck and service the grid. And at the same time, so you support small business, and at the same time, change attitudes about pickup. And let me just put that against the background that in Toronto, in the city of Toronto, the garbage pickup for a fortnight is only on 3 days. 1 for recycling, 1 for recyclables, 1 for regular pickup, and 1 for composting.
Dr. Henry?
Yes. I want to go back to the issue of the contracting and the various overlapping or sometimes conflicting responsibility for garbage collection. Just to be clear, is some of the corporations, the contractors who pick up the garbage, like by where I live in Diego Martin, the corporation is not always the one issuing the contract to that particular garbage collector, right? Is that correct? So it's SWIMCOL who issues the contract.
I think now we need to make it clear that cities have a different set of powers that the municipalities don't have. So one example is that there's a county medical office of health that's contained in each city. In the municipalities, we have to rely on the centralized county medical officer health services. So, and this garbage collection thing also has that kind of difference when it comes to city and municipality. In the municipalities, all of the contracting, as far as I know, is done through SWIMCOL.
SWIMCOL. So when people want to complain about their garbage collection and trucks coming at inappropriate times and so on, and they go to the regional corporation, and the regional corporation says, well, we didn't hire the contractor. What's to comfort the average citizen that something could be done?
But your question is geared toward to me. Anyone. That shouldn't be a response. It is our responsibility to pick it up. The challenge, as Mayor Agrello pointed out, is really supervision. It is cheaper If I have a contract for $1 million to pick up garbage for the year, and sometimes a lot more than that, it is cheaper in some cases to encourage the persons who supposed to be that buffer between the corporation and supervising the work that we do. Is it cheaper to encourage them to do other things? And unfortunately, in this space, we find many cases where contractors are out on the field soliciting from burgesses, tell burgesses whatever stories they want, and our people are not there to supervise. Our people seem to work for the contractors and not for us. So it's really about supervision, and we need to take charge of it. And Romero Gallo pointed to the fact that we've been doing that. We've been ensuring that we return to that level of supervision.
Just quickly, is that sentiment across the board, or is it just in the Tunapuna regional?
Madam Chairman, I would like to add to this discussion with respect to contracts and who are responsible for procuring the contracts and who are responsible for monitoring the contracts. The present contracts that are the municipal solid waste contracts that exist now has been in existence since 2013. The contracts were initially procured by the Solid Waste Management Company Limited on behalf of the government, and the contracts are to be managed between the corporations and the contractor. These contracts presently, they have expired 2016 February, and they continue on a month-to-month basis. So the corporation is responsible, to answer Dr. Henry, the corporation is responsible for the complaint you would have, or the problems you encounter in your area. Each regional corporation is responsible for monitoring these contracts.
Ms. Ram-Logan, could you just tell us what is the problem, why it's on a month-to-month basis? Because it seems to me this is a sort of essential service, garbage collection, waste collection.
Okay, Chair, I will defer to my planning officer, who has been very instrumental presently in redoing these contracts, and we are taking our time because we are addressing the existing deficiencies and gaps and problems that have been identified with respect to actually including in these contracts the area of recycling and the other new initiatives that we'd like to see happening at the corporation level. So I'll hand you over to Ms. Ramirez.
But before you do, I just want to find out about the collections, you know. Because I think, sir, you were talking about the collection of garbage alone? The contracts for the collection of garbage?
Yeah, collection and disposal, Madam Chairman.
Yes. So what he is saying is that contracts have expired and there's a month-to-month contractual arrangement for people who perform this essential service. Yes. So what I want to know is why are we now doing it after the contract has expired? Why are we now looking at the contract after it has expired?
We are not only looking at it after it expired. It was an ongoing evaluation of what was taking place on the ground, and subsequent to the termination of the expiration of these contracts, we started a consultative process with the providers, with the corporations, and also SWIMCL with a view of improving the system that we have presently. And we identified that there was a lot of problems associated with the terms and conditions of the contracts in terms of enforcement, and if there are problems and issues related to the contractors. So it took a little time because we were trying to get some really good indicators and do a comprehensive evaluation in terms of people were tendering at different corporations with the same equipment. So we came up with a multi-criteria evaluation process. So it means that we had to do a comprehensive situational analysis of the existing situation to address the deficiencies and gaps. So that's the explanation. But we have already procured, and we are presently developing the contract.
So you had, essentially what you're saying is that you had problems with the procurement process. Not so much the contract.
Yes, and the contracts, the terms and conditions of the contracts.
Mrs. Ramirez Modest, perhaps you could give us very succinctly what were some of the problems encountered in these contractual arrangements.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the contractors, some of the issues we were having with the arrangement was that too many large contractors were more or less controlling one area, we would say, and at times they would hold that area at ransom. So we look at that situation also. There were issues where one contractor would be given too many contracts, more than he is capable of dealing with. And those were more or less some of the major issues that we were looking at to rectify with this new arrangement that we are looking at. Contract-wise, the corporation felt that they were limited with their ability to actually rectify some of the situations that they were actually experiencing on the ground. Since the contracts were managed by SwimCall, now we are looking at having the contracts being managed by the corporation itself. Those are some of the new arrangements that we are looking at. We are also looking at training the corporation with respect to contract management so that, you know, we would be able to more or less hold contractors accountable for their performance.
Dr. Francis?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Modest. And then this leads to the obvious question, which is, does bad contracting work play any part in the tendering process? Meaning, if you have a history of performing poorly, or holding citizens to ransom, or dumping garbage on the side of the road, does that play any part in the selection process going forward? Or is it the case that we just keep recycling the same poor performers over and over?
And that is one of the things that we have. SwimCall will be actually carrying out that procurement process first. Those are some of the things we outlined to them that we don't want. Because normally what would happen at the end of each contract, the corporation will provide a performance appraisal for SwimCall. Those performance appraisals are being looked at as part of the evaluation in determining consideration and selection.
So I'll be very clear. It should not be the case going forward that people who have traditionally and historically performed poorly will be selected again for the same job. It should not be the case.
It should not.
Okay.
Based on what we requested.
I will remember that response.
Through the chair?
Yes, certainly.
If I can speak briefly on how we will operate in the Port of Spain Corporation, where the contractors are concerned, what is done is separated in three parts, basically, where we have the central business area under one contractor. We then have the East Port of Spain area, which is made up of 9 contractors, right? We service the East Port of Spain area. Then we have areas of the east side of the Port of Spain that we service in-house. Where the contractors are concerned, there's a monitor done by what we call charge and specials. They monitor these contractors on each day of collection in all the areas. They're bringing, between the supervisors, they're bringing a daily report on the performance of these contractors. Appraisals are done every month in relation to the performance of these contractors. And in most cases, when a contractor fails to abide with the terms and conditions in relation to collection, we assess what wasn't done, and we then made that report to the engineers department, where in turn he's not being paid, or that contractor is not being paid for that period of time that work was not done. We also have meetings every so often. We haven't had any for the past, well, months or so, but the fact remains is that every so often we call them in and we liaise with them one-on-one. In most cases, we call them in if we have issues with them to explain what our assessment has been, and as such, corrective measures needs to take place in regards to our observation.
Thank you, Senator Beaker. Thank
you, Madam Chair. For Mr. Agarat, regarding the network, and in Trinidad, we noticed in Port of Spain during the short upheaval on that fateful day, the garbage truck dumped some refuse in Port of Spain. Are there any consequences that followed for that contractor? And what mechanisms are in place to prevent this from happening in future?
Well, through the chair, we have very, maybe little impact or there's little we can do in circumstances such as that, because you'll have to appreciate the circumstances in which that event took place. It was said that the driver was under duress. He was threatened by residents at gunpoint. All this, it became a police matter. As far as I can recall, he was charged. I don't know the circumstances why he was charged, but I know he was charged. But there's little that we can do, because you have to understand for the East Port of Spain area, it's a hostile area in most cases. Reasons being why a lot of it was contracted. We have to understand that we have workers in some instances work within particular areas or live within particular areas where they can't venture or go even. Say, for instance, Upper Gonzales may be involved with Lower Gonzales. And as such, over the years, we have noted that it's much difficult to have our workers go into those areas without being threatened. And as such, that's why we would have led to having to contract the East Port of Spain area to what it is presently. But we have little control of what could be done in relation to what transpired that couple of months back. The most we can do is monitor it and report it, and hope that we can resolve in a particular way.
Can I ask, has any consideration been given to, I mean, not necessarily police escorting the garbage trucks, but some heightened police presence around the time of the pickup of refuse? Has that been considered in the past?
No. Through the chair, it has not been considered. It could be a bit challenging. East Port of Spain is a big area. And adding to the fact there are areas where, in some cases, let them refer more to like the inaccessible areas where the contractors are required to have people walk within the lanes and in our roads where vehicles can't pass. So even at that stage, it's difficult to even have police follow them at that point. No, we have not considered that in the past.
Is it that regular contractors are intimidated and then contractors from the area bid for the contracts so they can go in safely and pick up the garbage? Is it that they are intimidating contractors?
No, through the chair, I don't think that is the case. What we have tried to do is, in most cases, the contractors who are deemed suitable, once all requirements are met in relation to providing the correct equipment and so forth, we try to choose persons from within the area. And so they will hire workers within the areas also. So I don't think it's a case of being intimidated or so.
Mr. Agarat, if I were to ask you a question based on your last statement, we need a whole new session. So I will not. I'll ask a simple question. Is there any feedback mechanism in terms of getting responses from the Burgesses, in terms of the quality of service provided by the contractors? Or is it just complaints and you judge based on that?
A lot of it could be based on complaints. Adding to the fact, though, we have our open line. We have been giving out flyers for the past over 2 years or so. We usually give out flyers. where there's contact can be made through our office to lodge any complaints, issues that the businesses may have with the services provided, and as such, we then take action to deal with the matter of it be contracted in-house or out-house.
Yes, Mr. Leacock?
To you, Madam Chair. Just one, as I'd like to point out that garbage collection is a capital-intensive business, and therefore it favors those who already have. And that's a big part of the problem, that it is almost monopolistic. Yeah? The planning officer has, I think, highlighted well what needs to be done to fix it. Two is that there needs to be some consistency across the municipalities about the issue of bulk waste. In most of the contracts, we don't pick up particular types of bulk waste in particular building material. And yet, we tell the burgess that's your responsibility. So the burgess who does the right thing will take that bulk waste, pay somebody $300-400 a truckload to carry it down to the dump. But as that person exits the home of the burgess, they often would look for the closest available empty space and dump it. And then the corporation still has to find resources to pick it up. So I think somewhere in there, corporations should monetize bulk waste removal and make it affordable. And then finally, your last question, Dr. Lovell, about a feedback mechanism. I think you will find that the politician's view of how effective the pickup is, and often the administration's view of how effective the pickup is, will differ significantly.
I was just being polite saying
we have to face the burgesses.
Yes.
And burgesses call you every day and tell you stories about this person, say if I don't pay them and I'm picking it up. Now sometimes burgesses create that monster because they want you to pick up things that they know they're not supposed to, so they offer you. And once they offer the contractors once, the contractors then say, every time, I want. And
Okay.
it's worse at Christmas,
Thank you. I just want a few quick things to wrap up. I see one corporation allows for the collection of waste from pluck shops, but we realize that the Port of Spain City Corporation has a difficulty with picking up the waste from the coconut vendors. Is it that the corporation is paid by pluck shop owners?
Madam Chair, can I answer that? Yes, we had grave challenges in Shogunus in the past where you would have those pluck shops disposing of their waste most times Friday night, Saturday, Sunday in open spaces or different traces or lonely areas. And we had devised a policy where we charge $5 per bag, and we go on the Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays to the different pluck shop and collect those bags.
We had the EMA and swim call before us on the last occasion, and they spoke about the eye care project. Is there anything, well, that would be in relation to the Port of Spain City Corporation. Would it? Would you all have had anything at all to do with that project? Any corporation? Yes, Mayor?
Madam Chair, we had a partnership arrangement with the EMA with that eye care project. But one of the challenge we face is that it was supposed to be much more education, the education aspect of it, than just having the project there. Also, Shogunus have partnered with corporate entities as it relates to recycling, glass, plastic. And we have continued that program In schools, we haven't achieved our target of the 22 primary schools within the borough of Shoguners, but it is work in progress with that recycling as it relates to the schools. But we are part of the EMA iCare project and also recycling with other corporate entities.
Is any other corporation involved in the iCare project?
Madam Chair, at a few of our grounds, the EMA have placed bins, and they have been generally well used. The challenge has been, however, as with the CMOH or the doctor who spoke to, I think the PHI, who spoke to the Savannah, when you create large receptacles to put anything, people come from everywhere and dump everything that doesn't belong in it. So education is key. Even in our recycling project, we partnered with Bishops, Anstey, and Trinities, and with a few of the schools on the Tacarigua Main Road and in the Dinsey area. And that, when the children do it, that helps the parents to follow.
What about scrapyards and unregulated garages with oil and that kind of thing? How do the corporations deal with that? Perhaps we could find out from Mr. Regrello.
Madam Chair, there's a dichotomy between the various municipalities and how we function. I could say that we have enforced the Litter Act. We have a very efficient public health department, and they do their job, so my job is very easy.
So is that the same for all of you? With respect to scrapyards and motor oils and whatnot?
I'm see if it's all right. Can we ask Ms. Rivera to respond?
At present, the litter prevention wardens working under the Litter Act, they deal with those issues.
Okay, now SwimCall has a waste management policy. Is it that SwimCall has passed that policy on to the regional corporations and said, listen, whatever programs you put in place, you must keep this policy in mind? Or is it that you formulate your own policies?
I'm not even aware of SwimCall's policy, to be honest. What I can also tell you about the issue of the garages and the oil is that EMA is the main body, but EMA is severely hampered by the date of the act. A lot of those garages, if they came up prior to the act, EMA could take only action to have them clean up, but not to remove them from residential areas, etc., and that has been a challenge.
Well, interestingly enough, the EMA also has an updated national environmental policy. It's still in draft form, but it seems to be very thorough. So perhaps the corporations could liaise with both SwimCall and the EMA and have a look at their policies and take some guidance or ideas if any of these policies are helpful to you in preparing your programs. Do we have any other questions from members? Okay. Video? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I am going to ask each of you each of the heads, starting with Ms. Ramlogan, to just make a brief closing statement.
Thank you, Chair. Today has indeed been very fruitful and productive for us as a team, and it is indeed very encouraging to see that while we are taking initiatives at the regional level, we have adopted an incremental approach to solid waste management, and we actually were the author of that integrated solid waste management policy. through a consultancy, and when Swimcol was transferred to public utilities, we passed that policy to them, but that was done through a consultative participatory process with the regional corporations. The ministry is committed to good governance through effective participation, collaboration, transparency, and above all, accountability. Our vision is that solid waste will be viewed as a resource and will be managed by technologies and methods that support sustainable communities and environments, that minimizes waste, promotes ecological integrity through pollution prevention, promotes efficiency, and develops resources to revitalize our local economies in these trying financial economic times. We hope to reduce our reliance on landfills, reduce the toxicity and quality of waste, conserve our natural resources and energy, improve public health, while support the economy and reduce greenhouse gases. The ministry will continue to work accordingly to improve our legislative regulatory framework, our development capacity to ensure effective implementation and enforcement towards enhanced quality service, and balanced sustainable development for our citizens with sound infrastructure and a healthy environment through effective solid waste management systems, processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Partas Singh.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Ministry of Health wishes to reiterate the World Health Organization's definition or understanding of what is health, and that health is not just the absence of disease, but really and truly, and it encompasses the social, the political, the economic, the cultural, as well as the biomedical. Within that framework, the link between the environment and health has been established. The risk factors that are associated with from those links and along those causal pathways have been established. The ministry is actively involved, and through the Public Health Inspectorate, through the Office of the CMOH, through the other agencies and within the regulatory frameworks or the legal frameworks that it has and the technical frameworks within which it has, the ministry remains committed to risk characterization as it relates to waste and the health risks associated with that. And the ministry remains committed to recognizing the value for interdepartmental, intersectoral, intrasectoral collaborations to allow for ensuring that we secure the health of the population moving forward.
Thank you. Mayor Boudan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I said earlier in my opening statement, that there should be greater oversight from the key players, and in this case, Swimcol as the key authority in terms of garbage collection and waste disposal. And I would like to say, because coming out of comments here from members and from chairman of corporation, there are times that we all have grave concern in terms of the contractors and the collection of garbage. And may I say, and I hope it's not strong words, that there is a garbage cartel, if they use that word. Madam Chair, I hope I'm not breaking any rules, but there is some greater level or greater input coming out of this committee in terms of the way forward, because many a times, and the information came that contractors have contracts in several corporations, and at times they would not have their obligations to a particular corporation. Like, you know, of sugarness, they will come at all given hours at dissatisfaction to our bridges, and I think that is one key area that we should look to have corrected, to make sure that the happiness of persons and the disposal of garbage is done in a timely manner. And may I share very briefly the way forward? I think that in terms of sugarness, we have already put in place, and we are waiting in terms of monies, how we could move this process forward. And other corporations could also benefit from it, because a lot of monies are spent in picking up those tree trimmings and garbage of that nature. And I think that the way forward should be like you have a wood chipping machine, that you could have land space, do it into your particular region, and use the compost or the mulch to do beautification projects, start with the schools, religious organizations or so, and even on a wider scale, it could be sold back to persons who want to do that. So I think that will eliminate a lot of cost in going to the dumps, and those could be recycled as part of a new innovative program. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Regrello.
Madam Chair, this was a very enlightening program for us today. I would just like to say that we in San Fernando are very fortunate for the system that we have in the city of San Fernando. As I said before, we have a very competent group of litter officers. As a matter of fact, they charged councillors, I think it was last year, some of our councillors were charged for breaching the Litter Act. It tells you how serious they are, and we do not encourage that sort of thing, as well as the level of the public health department. They're very strong in what they do, and they make, as I said before, they make our work very easy. Of course, Mr. Ramrat and our CEO, they have been involved, as somebody indicated earlier on, with the campaign. And I don't know if it's a Rio Claro thing, but there's something about that, how they get it done. And let me go further to say that maybe we could look at Mayor Budan spoke about the cartel, and I know that there's a new policy that's going to be introduced where SWIMCAL will really address that and reducing that, and maybe make it in various, for instance, they have categories of small, medium, and large contractors, which will give you a greater sense of monitoring and ensuring that you get the work done. So all in all, this was a very fruitful and very rewarding meeting for us, and we will leave here encouraged and enlightened by this experience. Thank you.
Mr. Leacock.
Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, all members of the committee, I want to thank you for the opportunity to have addressed these issues with you. We at the TPRC are very concerned with the state of affairs when it comes to scavenging and health issues. We note, for instance, we had an incident of a rat actually attacking a person in the Bangladesh community, and those things only happen when the population grows too large so that they can feed adequately. And we therefore are very aware that we require a clear set of initiatives that will deal with scavenging in a timely manner. We look forward to reform giving us the power to do some of the things that we need to do. And even before reform, that the persons involved will allow us the space to do what we need to do, because we can't just sit down and wait on the reform. Chair, we understand that this could only work with careful monitoring of the present scavenging arrangements and the future scavenging arrangements, and we hope that those will be put in place by the ministry very quickly. We look forward to a strategic shift in the model, so that which should be based on a clear policy, whether it be waste to product or waste to energy or some combination of the two, so that we'll see Trinidad and Tobago come closer, one, to satisfying the SDGs which we have already signed on to, and two, just seeing us become a healthier space.
Thank you. Ms. Park.
First, let me thank the chairman and the members of the board here for inviting us this morning. It has been very educational. We noted the views of members, we noted the questions, and also the views expressed by the other persons here. And we know that garbage disposal and collection is a nationwide problem. And we at the corporation, we are trying, because, we have all the reports of the conditions of the city. And even today, Vice Chairman, only recently, I walked the savannah and I spoke to all the coconut vendors there, and I did my report. So I know the Public Health Department, they are working towards improving the conditions of the coconut vendors, which we will be seeing soon, very soon, I can assure you. And we are trying at the Port of Spain Corporation because we do have our challenges and our constraints. But we are all up to having the city in a much better condition. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for attending and contributing. We have learned a lot, and I hope that when we put out our report that you'll have a read of it to see whether your views were reflected accurately. I think what this has also shown is that the regional corporations perhaps need to have tighter links amongst themselves in terms of laying out projects and this kind of thing and sharing of ideas amongst each other. I don't know if that happens in any formal or informal way, but what I get from you is that you have separate inputs into your respective communities, and you may benefit from liaising with other communities to find out how you may solve a problem more easily than you would have otherwise thought. So I want to thank you all very much for attending. You certainly have given us a lot of assistance. And I want to thank the listening and viewing audience. I apologize for not being able to give you the usual information with respect to how you could channel your comments or questions to us, but at the next live meeting, I assure you that that will be the case. There being no other business, this meeting is now adjourned.